everybody, this is Steve Jr. with the Design Edge. I'm super excited. I don't have a guest this week because we've got some exciting experiences to share with you as examples of the type of amazing work that can happen when you're focusing on the consumer. So we do have a client now that shall remain unnamed. That's a lot of the work that I do is we don't name our clients, but we tend to really have great relationships. And this is one of my favorite clients ever. Great relationships with senior leadership. They committed to investing and believing in this work, and now they're starting to see the returns. And we want to share part of that today because, I think a lot of people that do this work, a lot of you that might be listening, you want to challenge yourself. I know when I wake up every day, I don't want to do the same thing over and over again like Groundhog Day. Again, if you haven't seen Groundhog Day, it's a must-view TV. Bill Murray back in the day. Now he's got a resurgence in his career, so that's good. But you don't want it to be Groundhog Day. You don't want to wake up every day and wonder if it's going to be the exact same thing. So anyways, let me give you a little background about what we did and start off from that perspective. We were doing, again, this is a healthcare project, so we were doing some in-home interviews on a specific topic. And I got a request from my client that said, hey, could you maybe through your in-home interviews generate some ideas or some potential solutions? And I'm like, nope, can't do that. I said, what we can do though, is we can take the insights from the in-home interviews and the other work that we're doing, and we can use that over maybe a one-day workshop. I had no idea if it was going to kind of quote be bought in terms of being willing to do it. And I said, I think in a day, and this is where in the back of my head, I've always wanted to do a one-day workshop. Don't ask me why, I can't explain it. I think just the constraint of time just really motivates me. And I've got a lot of stories in my life where a constraint on time has really just helped me succeed. And I said, I think if we did a one-day workshop, that we could maybe generate some really good ideas because we've got some insights, we've got some expertise internally. So maybe we can make all that come together. And so client agrees, and we decided to split it up into 2 half days just because of the crazy schedule. So we had, I think 1 week we maybe had a Wednesday or a Thursday, and the following week it was after Labor Day. We did our second session the Tuesday after Labor Day. And that second session, we'll talk about each one, but just in case I forget the second session, we actually had a virtual team that Seth led because we were continuing to work on our prototypes. Anyways, I'll talk more about that in a second. So why did we do it? Like I said, we had some great in-home interviews. We were getting some incredible insights. However, most of you know that when you're working with consumers, they don't necessarily build the innovations for you. They provide the insights that inform building the innovations. And sometimes, and I love this, we work with them to co-create and collaborate. There's nothing wrong with that. I can use the tired old Steve Jobs, well, if you brought consumers in and had them create the iPod, they wouldn't have created it, right? Anyways, we got together on the first day. We designed this one-day workshop. So the first day, which is really about 5 hours. So technically we did it in 9 hours over 2 days. But we really brought in experts from around the company. And my client, I wish I could say her name because she's amazing. She rallied everybody that needed to be in the room, and they were there. Now we had a couple people that were on holiday, and I'll talk about how when they came back, that was a bit of a disruption for the team because it's important to be aware of, the mistakes that we made. Because, again, if you listen to any of our podcasts, the few that are out there, I have a goal of making mistakes. Actually, I try to avoid them, but we made a couple mistakes that we learned from. But we had this great cross-functional group of probably, I'm thinking 8 people roughly around the table, if I remember correctly. And then we had our friends from Latino Connection. We had Ashley, Jessica. We had Seth from Human-Centered Healthcare, and myself as facilitators within the room. So we level set for about the first half hour about what we were doing, pulling in some of their expertise, kind of having a panel-ish type of discussion. Very rapid, very quickly, just to make sure that we could gauge the level of background on this particular healthcare topic. And I asked the team, actually I told the team, I said, my goal today is to ideate, to create 60 ideas. I said, if we could do that, I will be overwhelmed because, again, by that time we're a little bit over an hour into our session. And so we used a number of creative ideas or a number of creative activities that really helped to generate solutions. And, some of these I've learned from my innovation engineering boot camp. Some of them I picked up on the way, and some of them we created them, on our own. I think my favorite that I really like that we didn't get to use is the gauntlet. And I think that's one of those where I wish I could have substituted it. Seth, what was your favorite activity there?
Well, she did the gauntlet challenge.
Well, yeah, his team. So
yeah,
he did that. He did that one afterwards, but that's cheating. What did that day? What did you like?
I like the one that I presented on. That was the breakup letter.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. I totally forgot. We did a breakup letter so that we had our participants acting like they were consumers, and they were breaking up with the company. And I've run that one a couple of times before. And that was really powerful because they had to really dig down deep into the knowledge and their experiences of why someone would want to break up with the company. But I think that sparked a lot of great ideas. And Seth is correct. We did he actually ran the gauntlet with his team during a separate session. And the gauntlet is really cool because we just go to the top 50 companies. I think this time I went to the top 50 companies that are doing good in the world. And we take about 20 of those and we write them on a piece of paper. And then each person has to act like they're the CEO of a specific company. So for example, if you're the CEO of Tesla, you have to, from Tesla's perspective, provide guidance and insight on how you would solve this particular healthcare problem. Now, this is something that has been done, at least that I've known, many, many years. It's not something that I invented. It's just something that I use because I really enjoy it, have our own spin on it. I remember doing this particular activity, the gauntlet, and Sean Nason, who is with Nason Group, we had 110 of the top executives in there, and we had 50 plus executives on each side doing the gauntlet. That was absolutely my favorite time. So I was bummed that I didn't get to it, but I was happy that Seth did. Anyways, the goal was to get to 60 solutions, 60 potential solutions. Well, I missed it by 2, but I think there's a technicality. I think technically if the people on the phone had printed out the documents, not that I don't love them if they're listening to this, and actually filled them out, we would have been at probably about 70 or maybe a little bit more. Anyways, we had 58 ideas in what, Seth, probably 2 hours, something like that?
Yeah, a ridiculous amount.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous amount in a very short time. And I think the other thing was that this group, I mean, they committed to the process, right? I mean, I think they really bought in. We didn't have time to sit around and do some of the normal things we would do from a teaming perspective.
Yeah, they kind of just believed in you.
Yeah, they believed in us.
Yeah,
and they believed in the process.
Right.
Plus, they didn't know what the process was, so that was even better. So until we probably showed them weakness or maybe that we didn't know what we were doing, I think we had their trust. So that was pretty cool. So, anyways, again, got to 58. I was a little bit bummed, but I'll get over it in probably a year. The best part then was we did the dotmocracy thing, right? So we had to affinitize because we can't create 58 prototypes because that's where we were headed. But we did have people affinitize it. And Seth, I got to give you credit because we had people saying, "Well, these two are very similar." I said, "Well, let's put them together and we'll combine and create a new solution for out of 3 or 4 that are similar." And so we got to 5. We got to 5 different kind of categories of solutions with very specific solutions underneath them. And one of the things that I found was really interesting, what Seth did is he grouped all the other ones. And education almost always comes up in these workshops. And I think how many solutions around education were there, Seth? Do you remember?
There was probably 25.
Yeah, there were 25 solutions that were created out of the 58 that were all about education, but nobody picked those as ones to go forward, which is great because I would hate to have to kill an idea right away, although it's not beyond me. But Seth had organized and categorized the ones that didn't get selected or into separate affinity groups, and education had 25 solutions, and I was so glad that we did not use any of them because education is just kind of this, and I've been in education almost all my adult life, even before then. Education is just kind of it's not very strong in terms of a in terms of an innovative solution from my perspective. Education is a part of everything we do every day. So it just needs to happen. Anyways, and this is still the first half, right? Still first half of of the day. And then we made him build 2D prototypes. I mean, why not? I mean, we're probably in what, Seth, we had probably about hour 3.5, something like that, 3.5 hours in.
Yep.
And we were originally scheduled for 4 hours, and I begged and pleaded that people stayed until their prototypes were completed.
They pulled in coworkers too to stay late.
Oh, that's right. So we had 5 ideas, and I thought, well, actually, you know what? I try not to judge prototypes or ideas because I'm a super judgy person, and you got to let the chips fall, and you got to let the feedback from the consumers drive this. And I'd be lying a little bit if I didn't say there was one that I kind of wanted to go away. But anyway, so the teams, not only did they build prototypes, and Seth made a little bit of a comment about this, and they were all 2D. So we didn't have like we didn't have like electrical tape and wiring and all this other stuff to create these prototypes. But it was
MVPs.
All in. Well, I would say some of them were close to MVPs, a minimal viable product. I say the second time we got even better on that.
Yeah.
So some of them were getting close to even MVP status because they were iterating. And that's a good point, because what happened is we had them create the prototypes in like a half hour. We didn't give them a lot of time. And then we had them go downstairs in this lobby, and they were consumers, probably not like our target consumers, but we had them test these prototypes just to get general feedback, just to get used to asking questions. And actually, the main purpose of that was to have them build a list of questions that we could then, we being Latino Connection, which is Jessica and Ashley, Seth and myself, we could the next day take these 5 prototypes out and test them in consumers' homes. And I'll talk about that. So I think there was almost every group got downstairs, at least 3 times to test their,
at least
3 times. And so they would go downstairs, they would test their prototypes, they'd come back up and iterate. So by the end of the day, at least everyone had 3 iterations of their prototype. Is that correct, Seth?
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm not lying too much, which is, lying on a podcast is probably not a good idea. So anyways, we left that day. It was exhausting. And we had 5 prototypes. And we told them the next day, we had lined up 3 consumers that we wanted to go out and test something. We didn't know what we were going to have, honestly. So we had 5 prototypes to take out the next day, but I needed a recharge. I know this isn't in our outline, Seth, but sometimes you need to be inspired. I wrote a blog post about this. Did you write a blog post, Seth, about our experience at the Philadelphia Museum of Art?
I did, but that one wasn't posted.
Not yet? Okay. Well, I'm excited. I'll be excited. Has mine been posted?
Yep.
Okay. Seth's also our webmaster for those he pretty much runs the operations of all this business. So anyways, we decided to go to be inspired, get recharged by going to the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Sorry, I can't speak. What a fantastic place, man. I had studied Cezanne. I had studied some of the most famous artists. And I'm in this museum where if I literally wanted to, I could have reached out and touched the paintings. Now, I did not. I was disciplined enough to do that. But I found myself, I couldn't even make it out of, what was that wing called?
Just the European wing.
Yeah, the European section of, which makes up what, like a fourth or a third of the main floor, the first floor?
It's just the 20th century, I think.
Yeah, of course, 20th century. So Cezanne, Monet, who else was there that I really liked? Anyways, I was just blown away. I walked out emotional and pretty vulnerable, and honestly it recharged me because we had just spent 5 hours running people through their own gauntlet creating these prototypes, and it really inspired me. I don't know if it inspired you for the next day.
Mm-hmm. It was more inspiring than what would have been the baseball game.
Yeah, we had 2 options: baseball game, go Phillies, or we were going to go to the museum, and we both decided that based on the level of inspiration we needed, we felt
and the weather.
And the weather, yeah, it was really hot. We decided the museum would be best. Anyways, got back from that, got ready for the next day. I think we were out the following day, 12 hours total, including drive time.
Yeah.
So we took the team. There was 4 of us. We took these 5 prototypes. We left downtown Philly, and we went out. We went out around the state, and we went to each consumer's homes, because one of the things I had each team do is we had them create a video of their product. I didn't know, honestly, I mean, I recorded them, but I couldn't really articulate as well as the people that created their prototype. So what we did is we had them create a video for their prototype. We had them create like a small little card that had the solution, the value prop, and a bunch of other information, what gains and pains it solved, or what gains it created, what pains it solved. And then the teams had created a list of questions, again, that they had tested the day prior. I remember the first stop, we actually, we didn't show the video first, which was a fail on my part. We tried to read off the solution cards, which was a horrible mistake. Remember that first one? Because, you know, when you get a video, it's a lot more robust, it's more interesting, and we fixed the process. But for the first time, we read off the solution cards, then we showed the videos. That's when people understood what was going on. And then we asked the questions that the team had. And so those conversations with consumers took anywhere, Seth, from an hour and a half to a little bit over 2 hours?
Usually 2 hours.
About 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been, by the way, like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks since we've done that.
Yep.
And so we did that for a couple hours in one consumer's homes, and we went to a total of 3 consumers. So again, I know all you judgy people out there, go ahead and judge me. It's fine. We never got to a point of necessarily saturation. However, we got some good consumer insight and feedback. Within a day. So they created their prototypes. The next day we went out, tested them. And then we came back the next week, like I said, the day after Labor Day. And we actually brought, before we got there, we had sent out audio clips of feedback from consumers for each specific prototype. So they had an opportunity to listen to them. I don't know if everyone did. I know some of them absolutely did because they were challenging us, which is a good thing. So we came back the next week and we added a couple people. And this is something where I failed as a facilitator. I did not level set with those new people that came into the room that because they missed, and it wasn't their fault, but they didn't have a right to disrupt everything that we had going on because there was some disruption. Would you agree with that, Seth?
Definitely.
And it wasn't always positive. Some of them were very good questions. Some of them were already putting up barriers and cultural walls is what I call it, because, you know, and a lot of times in corporate America, once you get to a certain, actually when you go from a small business to, you know, starting to hire people, the level of risk as you keep growing and growing gets much more limited. I know a lot of CEOs are frustrated by that, but that's generally what happens. The bigger an organization gets, the less risk the people are willing to take when leadership really wants them to take more. So anyways, that was a bit of a problem. That second day, you know, I think my client was happy. Our client was happy, but I wasn't happy. I don't know about you, Seth. Were you happy with kind of that second day?
I was pretty distraught.
You're distraught. That's a good word. You want to share a little bit more about why you were distraught about that?
Well, the biggest thing for me was my group got like 3 incentives done, and we had to create at least 3 more. So I had to lead a sprint, and then I had to come up with timelines, and I had to come up with a bunch of other stuff and basically be a project manager for the day for them.
Well, and I think actually virtually it was probably better for you.
It was definitely easier for me.
Yeah, because you had your team on, I think we used WebEx that day. Today we're using Zoom to record. So maybe Zoom will be a sponsor. You hear that, Zoom? But we were using WebEx that day, and Seth actually had a group of folks on. And in the room, that was the biggest challenge because we had some pretty good influential people there, and it took a while to get them into the same kind of energy that the rest of the team had been in. So again, that's a failure on my part. I should have done a better job beforehand, reaching out to them saying, hey, you're coming into this group that's on fire. Don't bring the water, you know, bring more matches or gas or whatever. But anyways, we got through it. And during that second day, you know, we had them review that consumer feedback. And we sat down and we talked about the feedback we got, because at the end of every consumer review of prototypes, we asked, what are the top 3 and what order are they in? And then which one would you eliminate? Basically, which one would you kill from moving forward? And all 3 of them wanted to eliminate the same concept or prototype or solution. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty consistent.
Yeah, all 3 of them. They said, nah, we don't really see a lot of value in that. And I was a little worried because, you know, someone put good energy into creating this, and it was a nice prototype. It was a great prototype, and the concept though just didn't resonate with consumers. So we came back that next week and we killed that particular solution. And the best part about that is the person that kind of led the creation of that prototype. I love her energy. I love her spirit and her commitment to it. She immediately jumped on another team and added just so much value right away. So again, if you're listening, you know who you are, but we can't say names. We want to keep the innocent and the productive anonymous on this one. Anyway, she was phenomenal. She quickly adapted to the fact that her idea was basically closed out. It did get added to the chief operating officer's potential list of future enhancements. So it didn't go away fully, but it's probably, it's probably not something that's going to happen in the near term. We did have them build the next iteration of their prototype. And as Seth said, he needed to generate some more ideas specifically around incentivizing people in healthcare. And so he ran that gauntlet challenge while he was on the phone virtually and ran a couple other activities to help them try to generate a few more. The reason why is because when we went out to test the prototypes, there were 3 concepts around incentives. And one of them, and again, you all probably, I have my own opinion around incentives. I'm not a fan. I'll just leave it like that as a summary. I'm not a fan in most cases. Let me make sure I say that correctly. The one that we wanted to do was probably, it was the coolest. It was the most exciting. It was the most expensive, and it would have taken the longest to implement.
Yep.
And so I love how my client put it the other day. She said, we've got to defocus. And I'm like, that makes total sense. We need to create. And out of that, we looked at the team looked at the consumer feedback, and there was one thing, and we can't say it because I don't want to give it away. There was one thing that all 3 consumers said would be their number one thing to get in terms of an incentive and a reward. And it was not a gift card. That's the only thing I'll say. It was not a gift card. It was much more sentimental. So we'll leave it like that. Because it really hit them in the heart. Man, I wish I could talk about it, but I can't. Anyway, so Seth was running that. I was in the room along with Jessica and Ashley. And the other thing is when we brought new people in the room, I should have told them, let's not get bogged down in the details. That's not what we're here for, right? We're here to really listen to the feedback, build that next iteration. And so again, those are some of the lessons I learned. I didn't brief people the right way to make sure that they were going to be productive coming in. And they got a little bit too bogged down in the details where I had to pull them up. So, and we had people questioning the validity of the data, which is fair. It's absolutely fair. If you've only reached out to 3 consumers, that's not necessarily groundbreaking.
It's not ideal.
Not ideal at all. And again, with constraints, we at least got some great feedback.
And it was consistent, which is the thing.
That is true. The consistency across all 3 made me feel a little bit better. Again, when Sean and I were at another organization, I remember one night in San Antonio, and we had Lori Cold and her group recruit, I think about over 100 consumers. And we did this round robin where we were presenting ideas and they were rotating tables. That's the best scenario I've seen ever. In one night we had consumers every night of the week. And on that Thursday night, I think we had over 100 consumers in one location giving feedback on 5 prototypes. It was phenomenal. So yeah, we were a long way away from that experience. And yet, as Seth said, we got some continuity of the comments. Anyway, it was really about rallying them, having them continue to move forward. And as I said, we had one of our sponsor is from the C-suite, chief operating officer. And she basically said towards the end of the day, hey, these 4, the next time we meet, I need to know what the 90-day implementation plan is for each one of them. And she goes, I also need a business case. She's a fantastic, if I had a role model for a sponsor, she's in my top 3 because she was very critical in a very positive way about the processes, about what we created from the perspective of wanting this to succeed. You don't want somebody that's only going to say yes. You want somebody to be able to give a critique. And we talked about that, to be able to receive a critique. And she was amazing at kind of getting us to the right place so that then she could work with the people to take it forward. Did I say that correctly?
Yep.
And so after we left that session, or as part of that session, I showed the chief operating officer my favorite tool, or one of my top 5 favorite tools, which comes from the book Business Model Generation. If you've never looked at that book, go buy it today. Please just go buy it, because the Business Model Canvas, it's a one-page view in this case of the business model for this particular new product or service. Okay, because some of these are really services that we're adding, and some of them are products. And so you take this. We trained this week, by the way. This is week 3. Week 3 is actually just ending, ended yesterday, and tomorrow they're presenting. So they week 3 ends on a Wednesday, and so we've already trained the entire group on how to start building their business case using the Business Model Canvas, which includes things like what customer segments are you targeting, and what's the value prop for each of those customer segments? What's the customer relationship like? What's the distribution channel? How are you going to drive value to each of those customer segments? And then what's the potential revenue? And as most people know in healthcare, it's not necessarily a really high margin business. And so how is this going to support potential bonuses from CMS and other organizations? How is it going to help with retention, or even potentially, because some of these are going to be impacting the brand, how is it going to help acquire new members in that case, new people to participate with them? And so with Business Model Canvas, we train them, and we train them earlier in the week, and I haven't heard back from anybody. So, either we taught it really well. I don't know if that's the case, but because we only had 45 minutes again. Normally, Business Model Canvas, I'll take people through a couple of weeks. Again, the gist is to get a high-level business case that says, here's why we should roll this out. Here's the value prop to the consumer. Here's the impact to the organization. Here are the partnerships we need. Here are the activities we have to do and the resources we need. Honestly, you guys, if you're listening and you haven't looked at Business Model Canvas, I had one former coworker, a woman that was brilliant, and she could not find a way where Business Model Canvas could not be used. She tried. She used it for training. She used it for org design. She used it for almost everything. I think she may have even tried to use it for cooking, but I'm not really sure. But she used it for pretty much everything but the kitchen sink. And I've used it as well, not just for, the starting up of human-centered healthcare. And Seth is in the process. I'm excited to tell you that Seth's in the process of starting up his own business, because I told him he has to fail 3 times by the time you're 26? Yeah, 3 times, and he's not failing fast enough for me. But anyways, we both have worked with our business model canvases for our own companies. And so in 3 weeks and 2 days, as of tomorrow, when they present to leadership, they have created 58 potential solutions, down selected to 5, created prototypes, killed one off, we're at 4, iterated on them multiple times, and they're getting ready to put forward their business model for for each prototype to go forward, as well as the business case. I mean, I'm talking, this is an organization that it's, like a lot of corporations, it's a Monday through Friday. There are some people that work there 24 hours a day. I don't think they ever leave. But if you think about it, that's 17 business days that team has just responded. Now, I'd love to say it's all us, but it's not. It's the fact that we've got executive support. It's the fact that we've got a great sponsor and day-to-day contact that is really just driving this behind the scenes. So let's talk a little bit about why it worked and why you shouldn't try this at home. First of all, I did want to challenge myself to a one-day workshop. And I don't know that I would do it again, to be honest with you. I think the reason why this one worked, in addition to having the right people, having the right executive leadership and sponsorship, everyone that was in the room was a subject matter expert on the topic from a different angle. So we had people from marketing. We had people from operations. We had people from the call center. We had people that had run this particular program for the last 4 or 5 years. We had new people that were new to the organization. But we had an excellent cross-functional group. Normally, I would want the group to spend a good couple of weeks diving into the data. Oh, and we had people that were familiar with the measures and the outcomes that they were trying to achieve. So when you look at it, we just had
The 18.
the A team. We brought in the A team and we had the right people. It's, it was a cross-functional group of folks. The second thing is that we brought in the voice of the consumer. Not only did we share with them beforehand the in-home interviews, but we also built personas and we built a journey map. Now the personas were probably 60, 70% complete and the journey map was maybe 30, 40% complete. And you know what? It gave them a great sense of especially where the pains and gains were, what the consumer experience was. And I think without that, I don't think we would have had nearly as much success. So those were some of the other things. Like I said, bringing in the voice of the consumer was absolutely critical because I don't believe, even as good as this team is, I don't believe they would have come up with as creative ideas as they did if they hadn't heard the voice of the consumer. The other thing is they iterated. As I mentioned on that first day, that last hour and a half, I guess between hour 3.5 and 5, not only did they have to create their prototypes, they had to go downstairs, and most of them, as we said, went down 3 times to talk to consumers, not just one consumer. I remember the first time a group came back up, I had expected them maybe to talk to 1 or 2 consumers. I'm like, well, how many people did you talk to? And they're like, 6. I'm like, I love this group. I think when I got that kind of, when they came up and they had that kind of energy, it was pretty impressive. I had a really good feeling at that point in time. Like I said, we also are having them build their business model canvas. The other unintended consequence of building or creating a business model canvas is you're going to refine your pitch. You're going to refine even your prototype because you're forced to think about things that during the creative process you don't have to. Now, I think even creating a business model is creative as well. I just think it's another layer for them to think differently and come at their prototype from a different angle. And the other thing is they're presenting their 90-day implementation plan within a month, actually under a month, again, 17 business days of starting this entire process. I asked my client, I said, have you ever known of something to occur this quickly within 17 days? And she said, absolutely not. She goes, this is the fastest that I've seen this organization move in a long time. And again, we help facilitate it, sure. It's having the right people in the room. You can facilitate like mad and try to get people to change, create, disrupt, build, back up, whatever. If you don't have the right people in the room, and she was responsible for that, making sure we had the right people in the room. We also had a sponsor at the C-suite level. For those of you that have failed like I have in the past, you know that doing it under that SVP, VP level gets kind of dicey. Kind of get to that point to where they go. That's when you bring it up to that VP or SVP level, they're like, well, this is a great idea, but we didn't ask for this, or you don't have their support because you need their support from a funding standpoint at a minimum. So someone's going to have to write a check for some of these, and it's not necessarily these out of these 4. There's nothing extravagantly expensive where they have to spend millions and millions of dollars. Some of them are going to have to get creative and go into some leasing options, but other than that, it's nothing extravagant. The other thing is that the team that I brought with me. So again, Latino Connection, they're a great organization, and George and team, shout out to you guys, especially Ashley and Jessica, who had never been a part of this. I think they were blown away. We did a debrief afterwards, and I think they just really got into it, and they trusted me as well. And Seth, of course, he has to trust me. If not, then I'll fire him. But other than that, he was really into it as well. And I think, I think all 3 of those folks added tremendous value because they were all assigned to teams to really, excuse me, they were all assigned to teams to really drive and push people. And that's not easy to do because people are always going to take the safe way. And what you have to do is don't put them in the terror zone, but if you've got like the comfort zone, the next layer above is kind of that uncomfortable zone. Having people go out and talk to consumers, even if it's not the right consumer, has them get rid of some of their fears. it has them taking that risk of walking out, talking to complete strangers about a potentially new product. And so again, what's the go forward plan? Well, again, day 17, they're presenting their prototype, they're presenting their implementation plan for the next 90 days, and they're also presenting their business model canvas. They're also going to have to work because, as any of us in healthcare know, it's a highly regulated environment. You know, I've worked in aerospace and healthcare, and believe it or not, I think healthcare feels more regulated. I mean, obviously, you know, both of them can have significant impact on people's lives if not done correctly. But you know, they're going to have to work with and partner with local and state government. And I think I'm positive that with the relationships that they have, they're going to have some really good outcomes. Because I think what's going to happen is it's going to spark these regulatory groups to go, how did you do that? What? You've done this? Because assuming at least a part of each of the prototypes get implemented in 90 days, you're talking 107 days. Is that right? No, 90 plus 7. Yeah, 107 days. I can add. That's pretty impressive. So anyway, we're going to be there to support them as they need to. I had a great conversation with my client, and I got the sense that she's got it from here, and I'll have her back. And if she needs something, she can always reach out. But I'm just, if people from the team are listening to this, and I hope they are, I love the work that you all have done. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to come in your space and help me achieve something that I didn't know whether or not could be done. I'm sure you may not have known that, but you all have exceeded my expectations. I'm even more excited for the consumers that they serve. I think they're going to be incredibly impressed. Again, even if only a couple of these go forward or elements of these go forward, it's going to have an impact on the consumer, you know, and there's more to do. So that's the good news. They're changing the culture. They're helping to shift mindsets in terms of how they work, and they're demonstrating their values and their belief in their consumers, and it shows. So, anyways, I feel like I've been talking forever. I want to say thanks to you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed this, and until next time, keep on designing. Thanks so much, and have a wonderful week.
Wanna get messed up and go to Japan. I got the sizzle.